Morning, everyone. How are you? I'm Martin. So I have been on Facebook this morning. I don't often really go on social media, but I was trawling back through the years trying to find an old video of when I ran up the Rocky steps back in 2014. So Rocky, my all-time favourite film, and I was really fortunate enough back in 2014 on the stopover flight back from Vegas to have a few hours in Philadelphia. So obviously got the Rocky tracksuit on, jumped in a taxi with Had my other half and a friend of mine called Dave, and we ran the Rocky steps, and it was amazing. And I've got the video somewhere. I will find it, and I wanted to find the photo as well because I've got one of my students, a guy called Zishan. So shout out to you, Zishan, who's helping me make some thumbnails, so it's not just my mug, which is the thumbnail of the shot, and he had the great idea of finding a photo of me at the top of the Rocky steps. So I had hair back then as well, but I promise it is me. But as I was looking back through these old videos, I came across loads of different posts from that I put at different times, and one was sharing it was me remembering back to one of my all-time favourite boxing matches, which was when Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson in 1996. It was really great because at the time I was a huge Holyfield fan. I was convinced that he had the style to beat Tyson, and it was great because at the time he wasn't given any chance of beating him. They said one thing he will do is he will fight. He won't run. At the time, Tyson had a few comeback fights. Hurricane Pete McNeely was the first one, and Frank Bruno and a couple of others, and he just sort of went through them. But obviously, Holyfield did beat Tyson. It was an amazing fight. Perfect game plan. But it just reminded me that a lot of my ideas on footwork and distance judgment came from looking at Evander Holyfield. He was really good at always being half a step away, but half a step away in balance. I mean, he could fight in close as well, of course, and he was really good with his dirty boxing, all that kind of thing, which we call it, but he was really good at being this half step away and mirroring someone's movement. So if he was here and the opponent was here, as the opponent would come in, he would mirror their movements, wait for that opportunity to bang and close the gap. And he spoke about it years later. Someone was interviewing him, and he said about this idea of being always half a step away. So you're always ready for that moment where you can close the gap. I've always really liked fighters that have this understanding of distance judgment. It was something which I really liked to do myself when I was fighting. It is to be able to have good alive footwork, knowing that I was ready to move out of a little bit further out of range if I needed to, or bang, step in and break the range if I needed to. Trying to convince that person to cross that invisible threshold where I can make the choice of either backing away or meeting them and hitting them when they think they've got to get to a certain closeness to hit. Just as they go into that range, I then break the range. And obviously mixing that up with timing as well. But I thought it's a great concept. Just generally as well, is sometimes when you don't know exactly what it is that you should be doing, or in terms of going for good enough, you're not quite feeling it, you're ready to commit to something. Can you at least be half a step away? Can you be making small adjustments where you're ready to launch if the environment is better for you? That might be get yourself a little bit more sleep. That might be, am I completely ruining myself at the moment with bad food? Can I take some steps towards a healthier version of me? So I'm doing and putting the bits in place that I can to just be that half step away. Thought really cool concept. I used to do in class as well, just going back to the specifics of martial arts, I used to like to teach my students a lot of footwork drills where you would have sort of the person here and someone else here, and distance judgment and literally mirroring. So as that person steps in, you step away. As that person steps away, you step in and try no matter where that person goes in terms of maintain that same distance judgment. How alive are your feet? Are you on the balls of your feet? That you can move in any direction that you need to. Where's your weight? Where's your balance? So that was a really, really cool thing that I found really, really helped people in terms of trying to get an idea of a basic structure of footwork that allowed someone to be able to deal with that dynamic 3D process of people moving around in different directions, changes of speed, timing, and what have you. So yeah, really cool thing to apply for life. In what ways in our life can we be that half a step away, ready to go? And then the other thing I thought I'd finish on, because it's a Sunday, is once again looking back at these old posts, looking back through old photos and things as well. Sort of similar sort of time period. It's actually a year later. So that Holyfield Tyson fight was in 1996, and then I think it was a year later. It was around 1997, where at the time I was still training in Wing Chun and looking at doing bits that complemented that as well, like boxing and things like that. I hadn't made the threshold over to proper mixed martial arts training, but we actually started to train a bit more specific grappling stuff, and we would go on a Wednesday morning at 7:30 in the morning to Orpington, and we would have a few of us a private lesson with Brian Jacks. Now, Brian Jacks, if you don't know who Brian Jacks is, he was a Olympic and world champion, and he held for many years 2 world records. One for dips, he could do 108 dips in a minute, and one for squat thrusts. I think it was 126 squat thrusts in a minute. Amazing competitor. We really thought, if we're going to do some grappling, let's go to the best. And he's obviously his thing was judo. really ahead of his time in terms of his understanding of the concepts of grappling. But the only time he could fit us in was before his game of golf. So we would go there, really stupid early in the morning, and he would it's quite funny, this guy wearing checkered golf trousers and a golf hat would be throwing me all around his gym in Orpington, but his mindset was incredible, and I just remember at the time 21 years old, and just absorbing in everything I could take in terms of his champion and winner's mindset. He'd always used to say, look, doesn't matter who they are, they've got 2 arms and they've got 2 legs, and if your technique and your mind is right, they're beatable. And yeah, he was fantastic. But the thing I always remember was at the conversation came round to being choked out, to being choked unconscious, and he asked me if I'd ever been choked out before, and I said no, I hadn't. And he said, well, if you want, I can choke you out. I said, oh, that's very kind of you, Brian. I think I'm okay. And he's like, well, it's not a problem. I said, no, I appreciate that, but I think I'm all right. And he was like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll put the choke on. You can get to the point that's uncomfortable, and if you don't like it, then just tap and I'll stop. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I don't want to seem too sort of weak and pathetic. So I thought, okay, that's absolutely fine. So this was gi at the time. So although I primarily, my grappling was no gi, at the time we were doing judo, it was with gi. So he came round the back, dragged the gi across, started putting on this sort of like slow choke. And I thought, I'll just take this as long as I can. And then when I can't take it anymore, I'm going to tap out. So I'm kind of there, start seeing the stars, vision starts coming in a little bit, wait a couple more seconds, then panic kicks in, so I tap, and of course he puts the choke on even tighter. So I really panic and really tap, and then the next thing I know, I'm kind of waking up thinking, have I got work today? Where am I? And it was just Brian's face over me going, are you all right, Mark? Was that okay for you? And that was my first time I got choked out. And of course, it was my old Wing Chun instructor that had already spoke to him beforehand and said, look, I want him to get choked out today. So, of course, it was all set up. But it was a valuable experience, because it told me really what my limit point is, and those kind of, when you're just about to go to sleep. And the other thing as well, it doesn't matter what you know. If someone's behind you and they know what they're doing and they've already got a choke on you, there's no magic way out of it. If you're that far down, that it's that bad, you're not getting out of it. Like it's funny, I do a lot of women's self-defense classes, and always the number one thing that they ask me is, what do you do when you get grabbed from behind? And I said, well, look, there's things I can show you, but you got to realize it's kind of more about it's upstream self-defense. How did you allow someone to grab you from behind in the first place? Were you aware of your environment? Were you switched on? Is there someone that you can hear footsteps behind you? You're kind of walking along and not acknowledging it. It's a really, really hard thing once you're there. And how true is that in a lot of things is we allow something to get right to that point and then try and do something about it. It's always that little bit harder. So, what can we do a little bit further up? Once again, going back to that awareness, are we switched on to what's happening to us and in our lives? So there you go. That's that was 1997, and it wasn't really until I think a year or two after that where I think it was around maybe 1999, perhaps 2000, where really sort of MMA was taking off, and there were places in the UK that you could actually start to train. And my time with Brian Jacks came to an end, but an extraordinary human being, one of them with one of the most amazing competitive mindsets, and just such a vibrance of life to him. Like he was incredible, such a big influence. So in the really, really massive unlikely event this ever makes its way to Brian Jacks, whatever it is, I hope you are very well, sir, and thank you for helping shape me as a martial artist. With that, guys, have a great Sunday. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.